Hi, so this is our demo of Project Calamity, our first-person shooter horror video game. So just to give a quick overview of all the different sections of the game that we were planning on adding, um, we were going to add an environment, which is what you see here, just to give the player and the enemies a place to inhabit um, and run around in. We're going to have a UI, which is just the display for all of the information and the menus and things like that. We're going to have an inventory to hold onto all the items and store them in memory, and then a player management system to access that inventory and other menus in the game. Finally, a combat system to control how the behavior of the player and the enemies changes during various interactions and for various inputs. We're also going to have a crafting system to combine items to build new items that can be equipped to the player, and then finally a quest system to control sort of the tasks that the player is assigned and be able to check them off over time and maybe assign points and things like that. So the parts that we actually got around to building was the environment, the UI, the inventory, the player management system, and the combat system. The crafting part of the game, we did not add, nor did we add the quest system. So here is a demo of what we completed. So you have a player controller. This is sort of a basic script that just takes the inputs of the player and applies them to the player character. It allows them to come over here and interact with the PMS, which is the system that controls all the menus and allows you to access your inventory and equip things. So you can see once you get close to the PMS, the UI thing pops up that allows you to access it. It tells you what to do. So you press F, and you can access the stash, which is the part of the inventory that we implemented. Then here we can equip our gun to our primary weapon slot. Hit escape to get out of that. Hit 1 to access that part of our inventory, part of our, I guess, our backpack, the part of the inventory that's attached to the player. And then that transitions into the combat system because now you can, now the inputs will control where the gun is pointed, sort of the angle of the camera, which then follows the gun and stuff like that. So what we didn't get to implement for the combat system was a full sort of player animation system. A lot of the animations actually did get implemented, um, and there was a lot of control that we added onto that so that it would do different things for different parts of aiming. But the main issue we had, and the reason you don't see a player character here, was that the getting the camera to work with the player mesh that we had set uh, created a lot of problems. It was basically a bunch of the player mesh that we ended up committing to. Um, as we got deeper into it, we found that a lot of things, sort of dealing with kind of how the mesh is represented in the files, was not set correctly to work very well with Unity. And so once it got to more complicated camera control things, a lot of it was basically turned into a mess and was very inconsistent, and we sort of ran out of time uh, to implement that to where it would sort of be it would work seamlessly with the game that we had created so far. So we removed the player mesh, and that's why you just see sort of a gun here with a flashlight. But that is, if we had more time to work on the game, that is definitely something we would like to have completed. Um, and then in that case, you would see an arm attached to this gun, and you would be able to switch between different views to be able to view your character and see him sort of from a third person or a first person view. Now, moving on to the combat stuff that was implemented, you see you have an enemy here that once you get close enough, the enemy read can read your position, and then once it's close enough, it'll start attacking you. You see he applies damage to the player, but only whenever that he is touched. Um, so basically, what happens is the colliders for the enemy um, touch the colliders for the player, and the player has a touch sensor on it. And so anytime that touch sensor reads that part of the enemy has touch the player, it will go and search for the enemy's sort of stat script, which controls its health and can connect to the sort of its attack behavior. And then that will read the player's stats as well and apply the damage that has been set on the back end of the game. So anytime the enemy touches the player, the collider sets off the touch sensor and applies damage to the player. So the player has this gun, which has its own script, which sort of controls all of its ammo and how much it can shoot. You press R to reload. That's what that sound was just there. And so it will then shoot at enemies as they come in. And a raycast will be sent out, and then when that raycast hits this enemy, it will activate the enemy's sort of take damage script as part of its stats and apply the damage to the enemy. And then when the enemy stats, or the health part of the enemy stats, reach 0, it then enters this death animation and will freeze there. And then as you can see, once you touch the enemy after it dies, it can't hurt you. That part of its behavior has been turned off. But we leave the colliders on and we leave the enemy there just for realism's sake. Okay, now we have a few more enemies up at the top. In retrospect, we could have made this game a little harder, probably. You see this enemy will come towards you. Once you get near him, his attack animation will start. It can damage you. You just shoot him before you die, and you're good to go. We got another guy right here. So the enemies, as part of their script, calls on sort of an AI object that's built into Unity called a nav mesh agent, and this lets it set its destination that it moves to, which was in this case is going to be the player's location, and then it'll change its rotation and the animation that it plays based on how it's trying to move. Then we got one final here. You can jump. And these bigger enemies, we set their health a little higher to make them harder, but they're actually still pretty easy to kill. And then finally we get up here to the station, which the enemies are guarding. And then there's another station here. So if we added another map, you could access this player management station, change out your gun, or if you want to equip other things or buy some health, you could do that there. So if we had more time, that's something that we would implement. But that's pretty much it for this demo. Thank you.